Hey everyone, my name is Alex, and I am a lead consultant with Expat Exact, an expatriate and relocation agency dedicated to helping you find the destination that matches your destiny. Today, I want to talk about something that is holding thousands of people back from the life they actually want to be living. And I mean thousands, because we hear this every single week from people in our community, from people who fill out our intake forms, from people who slide into our DMs and our email inbox with some version of the same story. I want to move abroad. I've done the research. I know where I want to go. I know what the visa requirements are. I'm ready, but I can't find a remote job. And without remote income, I can't make this work. And I get it. I really do. Because remote income isn't just a nice to have for most expat pathways, it's the foundation. Whether you're applying for a digital nomad visa in Portugal or Spain, whether you're going for residency in Panama, whether you're trying to qualify under a remote working program anywhere in the world, the question is they're going to ask you is where is your money coming from and can you sustain yourself here without taking work away from locals? Remote income is the answer to that question. And so when people can't find a remote job, it can feel like the whole dream starts to collapse. But here's what I want you to understand today. And this is really the thesis of everything we're going to talk about. A remote income and a remote job are not the same thing. A remote job is one way to generate remote income. It happens to be the way most people think about first because it's the most familiar. You apply, you interview, you get hired, somebody pays you a salary or an hourly rate, and you do your work from wherever you happen to be sitting. Simple, clean, familiar. But it's not the only way. And in some cases, honestly, in a lot of cases, it isn't even the best way. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 alternative paths to generating remote income that don't require you to be selected by an employer. 5 paths where you are in control of the timeline, you are in control of the offer, and you are in control of what you built. All right, let's start with the one that I genuinely believe is the most underutilized option on this entire list, and also the one that requires the least amount of change to your actual career or skill set. I call this one flipping the switch because for a surprising number of people, that's all it really is. Here's the concept. Right now, if you're out there applying for remote jobs, many of you are applying for full time W 2 employee positions. You're looking for a company to hire you, put you on their payroll, give you a salary, maybe some benefits, and call you their employee. And the challenge is that those positions are competitive. They're often location restricted, even when they say remote. And a lot of companies have pulled back on remote hiring over the last couple of years. But here's what's interesting. Those same companies, many of them, are still bringing in outside help. They're still paying for expertise. They're just doing it differently. They're hiring contractors. They're engaging freelancers. They're bringing in consultants on a project basis. And they're doing this specifically because it gives them flexibility. A contractor doesn't show up on headcount. A contractor doesn't require them to run benefits enrollment. A contractor can be engaged for 3 months or 6 months or an ongoing retainer, and the relationship is just cleaner from a business perspective. So, what does that mean for you? It means that no remote jobs problem you're hitting might actually be a no remote employee positions problem. And those are two very different problems with different solutions. A 1099 contractor role, if you're in the United States, is simply an arrangement where a company pays you for your services, but you're not their employee. You're an independent contractor. You invoice them, they pay the invoice, or an automated system is set to pay you based on an agreed payment schedule. You handle your own taxes, and they don't withhold anything. It's a business to individual transaction rather than an employment relationship. Now, let me walk you through who this works best for because I don't want to oversell it. If you have a professional skill that companies already paid for, writing, design, development, marketing, finance, accounting, project management, legal support, HR consulting, sales consulting, data analysis, then contract work is absolutely available to you. These are fields with robust freelance and contract markets. The question is just whether you've been looking in the right places and pitching yourself in the right way. Most people apply for jobs the same way, regardless of the employment type. They go to Indeed and look for a remote position and then they apply. But for contract work, in addition to these websites, you can also use platforms like Toptal, Upwork, and Fiverr Pro, which are specifically built for contract and freelance engagements. The traditional platforms like LinkedIn can still be excellent if you position your profile as a freelancer or consultant rather than a job seeker. And reaching out directly to former employers, former colleagues, companies in your network is often the most effective method of all. Which brings me to something I want to say directly. If you're currently employed or if you have recently left a job, your former employer is your first call. Seriously, companies lose institutional knowledge when employees leave, and a surprising number of them will pay you for that knowledge on a contract basis if you offer it. You already have the relationship, you already have the trust, you know how they work. That conversation, hey, I'm going to be independent. Would you be open to keeping me on as a contractor? Is one of the highest conversion conversations you can have in this entire process. Now, let's talk about the trade offs because I think it's important to go into this with your eyes open. The biggest one that people worry about is health insurance. In the US, most people get their health coverage through their employer, and when you go independent, that goes away. You're responsible for your own coverage. And yes, if you're staying in the US, that is a real and sometimes expensive challenge. But here's the thing, if you're planning to move abroad, which is the whole point of this conversation, this concern changes significantly. Because when you live abroad, you are going to need international health insurance regardless, whether it's a private international plan or whether your destination country has a public health system that you can access as a resident, and many do, including Portugal, Spain, and Panama. You are going to be figuring out health coverage in a completely different context anyway. The US employer sponsored insurance model becomes largely irrelevant once you've relocated. However, a good caveat is that the new health system could be cheaper. The other things people worry about, retirement, paid time off, job security, are all real, and I won't dismiss them, but they're also all manageable. As a self employed person in the US, you can open a solo 401k or a SEP IRA and contribute at levels that actually exceed what most employer plans allow. Paid time off becomes something you build into your rates and your contracts. And job security, well, when you have multiple clients instead of one employer, you actually have a more diversified income situation than most employers do. There's also the tax side of things. As a 1099 contractor, you'll pay self employment tax on top of income tax, and you'll need to make quarterly estimated payments. But you also get access to a wide range of business deductions: your home office, your equipment, your software, your professional development, and potentially even some of your travel expenses. The mindset shift here is this: you are no longer an employee looking for an employer. You are a service provider looking for clients. That reframe changes everything about how you present yourself, how you market yourself, and how you price yourself. And once you make that shift, the opportunities that were invisible to you before start to appear. Number two builds on the contractor mindset, but it takes one step further. And honestly, for some people, this is the move that changes everything. Let me paint you a picture. Say you're an accountant, you have 10 years of experience, you're good at what you do, you've been applying for remote accounting jobs for 6 months, senior accountant roles, controller positions, remote bookkeeping work, and you're getting nowhere. Either there aren't many openings or you're competing with 300 other applicants, or the ones you're finding aren't actually fully remote, even though the listing says they are. Frustrating doesn't even cover it. But here's what I want you to notice: accounting services, the actual service of helping businesses and individuals with their finances, is in demand everywhere. Small businesses everywhere need bookkeeping. Entrepreneurs everywhere need help with their taxes and their financial planning. The service is needed. What's not working is the employment channel you're using to sell that service. So, what happens if you flip the model? Instead of being an accountant looking for a job, you become an accounting firm looking for clients. Now, I know that phrase, accounting firm, sounds big and intimidating. But I'm not talking about renting office space or hiring staff. I'm talking about registering a business entity, building a simple professional website, setting up your service offerings and your pricing, and going out to find those clients. That is a firm. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that to start. And here's where something really interesting happens. As a business, you may not be limited by the job market in your city or in your state or even your country. You can market your services anywhere. You can specialize in serving a specific niche, small businesses in particular industries, or expats navigating complex tax situations, or US citizens living abroad who need someone who understands both US tax law and the tax system of their host country. You can go find the market that needs what you offer rather than waiting for that market to post a job listing. And the geography piece matters more than people realize. Think about it this way: if you're an experienced professional in the United States, someone with 10 or 15 years of experience in a field like finance or project management or HR or legal services, that experience has value in markets where the level of expertise is harder to find locally. Companies in Latin America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, they are often actively looking to work with consultants who bring a global perspective and US level experience. What's completely standard in your industry in the US might be genuinely premium expertise somewhere else. So you're not just opening your services up geographically, you're potentially repositioning yourself in a market where you command higher rates and face less competition. Let's talk about what it actually takes to do this because I don't want it to feel abstract. You need a business entity. In the US, an LLC is the most common and simplest structure for a solo service business. You can set up one in most states for a few $100s. Some states are better than others. Delaware, Wyoming, and your home state are the most common choices depending on your situation. If you're eventually going to be operating from abroad, there are also international considerations, and that's a topic for another video. But don't let the complexity of the full picture stop you from taking that first step. You need a professional online presence. This doesn't have to be elaborate. A clean, clear website that explains what you do, who you help, and how someone can engage you. A LinkedIn profile updated to reflect your business rather than your employment history. In some industries, that's genuinely all you need to start having conversations with potential clients. You need a way to deliver your services remotely and get paid remotely. Tools like Zoom, Slack, Google Workspace, and whatever project specific software your industry uses. And then for payments, Stripe, PayPal, or direct bank transfers for domestic clients, and tools like Wise or Deal for international clients. And you need your first client. This is the hardest part for most people and also the most important. Your first client could come from Google, but an underrated path is your network, from a former colleague who needs what you offer, from someone in your community, from a referral, from a conversation you had at an event. The business development piece, which is really just relationship building with purpose, is a skill you'll need to develop over time. But it starts with reaching out to the people you already know and letting them know what you're doing. One more thought on this, and it connects to something we talk about a lot at Expat Exact. Having a business entity doesn't just help you generate income, it helps you in the immigration process. Many residency programs, particularly in countries like Panama, Portugal, and throughout Latin America, have pathways specifically for self employed individuals and small business owners. When you walk into an immigration consultation with a registered business, a website, client contracts, and demonstrable income, that is fundamentally stronger application than I'm looking for a remote job. You're not just building income, you're building the infrastructure for your entire expat life. All right, number three, and I want to start by asking you a question. Think about your career. Think about all the things you've learned over the years, not just the technical skills, but the judgment calls, the mistakes you made and recovered from, the processes you built, the problems you solved. Think about the things that junior people in your field come to you to ask about. Think about the things that people outside your field have no idea how to navigate. All that accumulated knowledge, that is an asset. And most people treat it like it's just background information, just the stuff they happen to know from doing their job. but it's not. It's a product waiting to be packaged. This section is about two specific ways to package that product: consulting and online courses. And while they're related, they're also distinct enough that I want to talk about them separately. Consulting at its core is selling your judgment and your expertise as a service, not your labor, your expertise. There is a difference. When you're an employee, you're largely selling your labor. Your employer tells you what to do and how to do it, and you do it. When you're a consultant, clients are coming to you because you know something that they don't, or you can see something they can't, and you've solved a problem before that they're facing for the first time. They're paying for your perspective and your guidance. That framing is important because it means consulting is available to people at virtually every stage of their career, as long as they've genuinely built expertise in something. You don't have to be the world's foremost authority. You just have to know more than the person or the organization you're helping. Consulting also tends to command better rates than standard employment or basic contracting because you're not just executing, you're advising. And the remote delivery of consulting services is completely natural. Strategy calls happen over video, reports and recommendations are delivered digitally. Workshops can be run virtually. There's almost no consulting discipline that requires physical presence, and many clients actually prefer the efficiency of remote engagement. Now, how do you start? The same way you start any service business. You identify who you help and what problem you solve for them. You reach out to your network. You have conversations. You offer a free initial consultation to establish the relationship and demonstrate your value. And you build from there. Where it gets interesting for a lot of people is when they start to think about their consulting specialty in the context of their expat journey. We've worked with clients who have built consulting practices specifically around the industries that are booming in their destination countries. A supply chain consultant who moved to Vietnam and now advises international companies on manufacturing operations there. A marketing consultant who relocated to Spain and now helps US companies expand into the European markets. The expertise they built in their previous career became dramatically more valuable when they combined it with the geographic and cultural knowledge they gained by living abroad. Now, let's talk about courses because this is where the income potential starts to look really different. A consulting engagement is fundamentally still trading time for money. You have a client, you deliver a service, you get paid. That's great. But there is a ceiling on how much time you have, which means there's a ceiling on how much you can earn. A course breaks that ceiling. When you create an online course, you're essentially taking everything you know about a specific topic, structuring it into a learning experience, recording it once, and then selling it to as many people as they want to buy simultaneously, indefinitely, without your active involvement. That's a fundamentally different economic model, and it's one that has become accessible to almost anyone because of the platforms that now exist to support it. Kajabi and Teachable are two good options. Kajabi, in particular, is powerful because it's an all in one platform. You can host your courses, build your website, run your email marketing, set up sales pages, create a community, and take payments all in one place. Teachable is slightly more straightforward and has a lower barrier to entry. Depending on where you are on your journey, either one could be the right choice. But before we dig deep into the technology, let's talk about what actually makes a course sell. Because this is where a lot of people get it wrong. A course doesn't sell because it's comprehensive, it doesn't sell because it covers everything there is to know about a topic. A course sells because it solves a specific problem for a specific person. The more precisely you can define who your student is and what outcome they're going to achieve by completing a course, the easier it is to market and the higher your conversion rate will be. Everything you need to know about bookkeeping is a hard sell. How to retain $50,000 more in income through taxation as a small business owner is a much easier sell because the person who needs that outcome knows immediately that it's for them. Think about what specific, tangible outcome you can help someone achieve. Think about the questions you get asked most often in your professional life. Think about the processes you've developed that other people struggle with. That's your course idea. Before I break down the details of number four, I want to take a moment here to acknowledge something because I think it's important and I don't want this video to feel like it's glossing over anyone's reality. Not everyone watching this is in a field that translates cleanly to remote work. We know that. We work with people from all kinds of professional backgrounds, and some of them are in industries where remote work is genuinely rare, not because the job market hasn't caught up but because the nature of the work itself requires physical presence. If you're a nurse, you can't examine a patient over Zoom. If you're a skilled tradesperson, an electrician, a plumber, a welder, the work is inherently physical. If you're in a government role with specific security requirements, remote work may be legally or structurally impossible. These are real constraints, and I'm not going to tell you that a mindset shift is going to make them disappear. What I am going to tell you is this: your current profession does not define your ceiling. It defines your starting point. And if your starting point is a profession that genuinely can't go remote, then the most direct path to remote income is to intentionally build a skill set that can. Now, I know that sounds daunting. Learning new skills takes time. It takes energy. And if you're already working a full time job, which most people are, finding the time and the motivation to add a skill development track on top of that is genuinely hard. I'm not going to minimize that, but I am going to tell you that the landscape for skill development has never been better. The access has never been broader, and the time investment required to reach a functional, employable, or client ready level in many high demand skills has never been shorter. Let me walk you through three specific skills that I think offer the best combination of remote work compatibility, global demand, and achievable learning curves. Online business management is one that people often overlook because it's genuinely growing. As more entrepreneurs and small businesses operate fully online, they need people who can help them manage the operational complexity, coordinating projects, managing tools and systems, overseeing contractors, handling communications. It's a hybrid of project management, operations, and executive assistance, and it's almost entirely remote by nature. If you're naturally organized, a strong communicator, and good at keeping multiple things moving simultaneously, this might be the most direct path. Copywriting and content creation, the ability to write compellingly for businesses and brands, has been in demand for as long as marketing has existed, and that demand is not diminishing. If you can write in a way that persuades, informs, and connects with an audience, there are businesses who will pay for that skill. The barrier to entry in terms of tools and technology is basically zero. You need a computer and a strong command of language. The learning curve is about developing your craft and understanding how to write for specific business contexts, which takes practice and study, but it's absolutely learnable. Data analysis is increasingly critical for organizations of every size, and it's a field where people are often severely underestimating the opportunity. If you can work with data, clean it, analyze it, visualize it, and turn it into insights that drive decisions, you have a skill that translates across industries and can absolutely be delivered remotely. Python and SQL are the two most commonly requested technical skills in this space, and both have extensive free learning resources available. Pair those to tools like Tableau or Power BI for visualization, and you're well positioned. I want to say something bigger here, though, about the mindset around skill acquisition. A lot of people think about learning a new skill as starting over, as losing everything they built. And I understand why it can feel that way. But the truth is almost always the opposite. The skills and knowledge you've built in your current career don't disappear when you add new skills, they layer. A nurse who learns data analysis has a deep understanding of healthcare data and healthcare communication that a generalist maybe doesn't have. A skilled tradesperson who learns online business management has real world project management experience and client service instincts that someone coming straight out of school can't match. Your background is context, and context is valuable. You're not starting over, you're expanding. And now we get to number five. And this one is the one that I genuinely think and not enough people consider. And I think it's because it sounds way more complicated than it actually is. Here's the premise: instead of building a remote income source from scratch, you buy one that already exists. Let me explain what I mean, because I think a lot of people here buy a business and immediately picture something enormous: commercial real estate, a restaurant, and manufacturing facilities, some kind of massive capital investment. And yes, businesses like that exist, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about small online businesses, digital assets, things like content websites that generate income through advertising or affiliate marketing, niche e-commerce stores that sell digital or physical products, small software tools with a paying subscriber base, online courses or digital product libraries, newsletter publications with paid subscribers, done for you service businesses that have existing client relationships and workflows. These businesses exist, they're for sale, and many of them sell for amounts that are within reach of someone with meaningful savings, not lottery winner money, but real person savings. The marketplace for these businesses has matured significantly over the last several years. Platforms like Flippa, Empire Flippers, Motion Invest, and Acquire.com, which used to be called MicroAcquire, exist specifically to connect buyers and sellers of small online businesses. You can browse listings right now, filter by revenue, by industry, by business model, by asking price. It's a real marketplace with real inventory. So, why would someone sell a business that's already making money? Good question. There are actually a lot of legitimate reasons. Some owners built a business as a side project and they've lost interest in running it. Some are going through a life transition, a new job, a move, a family change, and they need liquidity. Some built the business to sell it. That was the plan from the beginning. Some are tired of the day to day and want to cash out. Just because a business is for sale doesn't mean something is wrong with it. It often means the owner's circumstances have changed. That said, and I want to be very clear about this, due diligence is non negotiable. Before you put money into any acquisition, you need to understand the business thoroughly. What are the actual revenue numbers? And can you verify them independently? Ask for access to the analytics, the payment processor data, the advertising account. Verify what you're being told rather than taking the seller's word for it. How is the revenue generated? And is the model sustainable? A content site that gets 90% of its traffic from a single Google search ranking is a different risk profile than one with a diversified traffic mix. An e commerce store that depends entirely on one supplier has a different risk profile than one with multiple fulfillment options. What does running this business actually require day to day? How many hours per week? What skills? What tools? Is there a team or is it a solo operation? What happens to the business if you don't understand some aspect of how it works? Why is the seller selling specifically? This is a question you should ask directly and push on if the answer feels vague. Most legitimate sellers will have a clear and reasonable answer. If the answer is evasive or inconsistent, that's a flag. Is there anything about this business that is dependent on the seller personally? Their name, their face, their specific relationships with clients or partners or advertisers? If the business revenue is tied to the seller's personal brand and that brand doesn't transfer to you, that's a significant risk that needs to be priced into the deal. These aren't reasons not to buy. They're things you need to understand before you buy. The due diligence process is how you protect yourself. And honestly, going through it thoroughly is also how you learn the business well enough to actually run it. Now, for most people who are new to this, there's a valuable middle ground between I've never thought about this before and I'm ready to make an acquisition. That middle ground is education. There are courses, communities, and resources specifically focused on buying and operating small online businesses. Spending a month or two in that world, learning the vocabulary, understanding evaluation frameworks, reading deal breakdowns will help you figure out whether this is a path that actually suits your skills and your risk tolerance. And here's the expat connection. Beyond the income itself, there's something else valuable about owning an established online business when you're pursuing international residency. Many visa programs and residency applications want to see not that just you have an income, but that you have a sustainable and verifiable income source. An established online business with documented revenue history is a very clean answer to that question. It's concrete, it's verifiable, and it demonstrates that you're not dependent on the local economy of your destination country. Some countries also have investor or entrepreneur visa pathways where demonstrating ownership of an existing business, even a small one, strengthens your application in ways that being an employee or even a freelancer just doesn't cut. It is a more advanced path. It requires capital, it requires research, it requires a level of business judgment that takes some time to develop. But for the right person, someone who has savings, who is analytical, who is interested in operating and growing a small business rather than building one from scratch, it can be the fastest path to the remote income you need. So, I've covered 5 distinct paths today, and I want to recap them quickly because I think there's something important seeing them all together. First, flip the switch and go from employee to contractor. Same skills, same expertise, different relationship structure. Often the fastest path for people who already have a marketable professional skill. Second, stop marketing yourself and start marketing a business. Create an entity that offers your services and open up your client base geographically and by niche rather than waiting for a job listing to find you. Third, expand what you offer by adding consulting and course creation. Package your expertise, teach what you know, and start building income streams that don't require you to trade hours for dollars one to one. Fourth, if your industry genuinely isn't remote compatible, acquire new skills that are digital marketing development, data analysis, UX design, online business management. The paths are well documented and more accessible than ever. And fifth, consider acquiring a small online business that already generates remote income. Buy the head start instead of building from zero. Now, here's what I want you to take away from all of this. These 5 options exist on a spectrum. Some are faster and simpler, some are more ambitious and take longer to build. Some require capital. Some require primarily time and effort. What's right for you depends on where you're starting from, your skills, your savings, your timeline, and the specific visa or residency pathway you're pursuing. And that's exactly where Expat Exact comes in. Because part of what we do when we work with clients is help you think through not just the destination and the visa, but the income strategy. The two things are deeply connected, and we want to make sure that the income path you choose actually aligns with the visa path you're pursuing, the country you're moving to, and the lifestyle you're trying to build. If you want to have that conversation, head over to expatexact.com. We offer consultations specifically designed to help you map this out, your destination, your visa options, and your remote income strategy all together in one picture. If this video was helpful, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps other people who are in the same situation find this content. Subscribe if you already haven't, because we put out content every week covering the real practical details of making a move abroad work. And leave me a comment. Tell me which one of these 5 paths resonates most with your situation. Tell me what your biggest obstacle is. Tell me where you're thinking of moving. I read the comments, and your questions genuinely shape what we make next.